Before we get started tonight, I wanted to remember former Fire Chief Steve Cutter. There was a very good obituary in our newspaper of record, the Daily News. So those of you who didn't see it yet, Chief Cutter was chief from 2000 to 2013. The Cutter family, of course, has been involved with our fire department for 160 years. His father had been chief before him. He was a Newburyport graduate, Newburyport High School graduate, class of '77. Very well respected by his classmates there, I've seen, co-workers here at the city. Unfortunately, we lost him to cancer in the last week. There will be a service at the Hope Community Church on Saturday the 14th at 10 a.m. for those who wish to attend. So if we could please have a moment of silence for Chief Cutter. Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The applicant, Mr. President, roll call for the meeting of March 9th, 2020. Councilor Tontar.
Present.
Councilor Vogel.
Present.
Councilor Wallace.
Present.
Councilor Z.
Present.
Councilor Devlin.
Here.
Councilor Khan.
Present.
Councilor Lane.
Here.
Councilor McCauley.
Present.
Councilor Conlon.
Present.
Councilor Shan.
Present.
Council President Argan.
Here.
We have 11, Mr. President.
Any late file items?
There are no late file items, I'm pleased to report.
Okay, we can go to public comment. We have 6 speakers. Each speaker will get 2 minutes each. I will call your name and then an address, and please repeat your name and address when you come to the mic. The first speaker is Bud Chagnon, 43 Lime Street.
Good evening, Councilor. Bud Chagnon, 43 Lime Street, Newburyport. I moved here about 2.5 years ago from Chelmsford, Mass. My wife and I love your little city. It's a great place. When I was in Chelmsford, I served on the Zoning Board of Appeals there for 6 years, and I'd like to be considered as a candidate for your Zoning Board of Appeals. I understand that there will be an opening coming up. Some of my interests are historical preservation and affordable housing. A couple of other things. I have 4 children, none of them live here. They've all moved out, thank God. And we didn't buy a house big enough for them to come back, so we're quite pleased with that. So that's it. I'd like to be considered for this opening. Any questions?
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a good strategy.
Joe Morgan, 55 Hill Street.
Council President and City Councilors, my name is Joe Morgan at 55 Hill Street. I'm seeking appointment to the Newburyport Historical Commission. I moved to Newburyport last year, and that coincided with my retirement. I spent 40 years practicing architecture, predominantly in Boston and predominantly on institutional buildings for colleges and universities. And I don't have historical preservation training as an architect, but I've encountered many of the issues I feel that are of concern, contextual issues of adjacent historical structures and density, height, setbacks, fenestration, materials. All of those things become pretty important things when you are drive toward architectural solutions on college and university campuses. And I think those things, those sensitivities and that awareness can be applied also for historical districts. And I think that my training and my ability to help the commission interpret documents and to think of alternate solutions for people who come before the commission, I think that would be a very good use of my skills. So personally, I'm looking at it as an opportunity to engage with civically in the community and to better understand the problems that are facing the community, the city of Newburyport, and to get to meet some people here. So I look forward to that, and I thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you for your time.
Jenny Donahue, 18 Cherry Street.
Good evening, councilors, Council President Eigerman, Clerk Jones. I hope everyone is well tonight. I can't believe I'm standing here almost 10 years later from my first appointment to the Newburyport Commission on Disabilities. Tonight you will be reviewing my reappointment and voting to decide whether or not you want me to keep pestering you for another 10 years. No, really. But it's been such a joy to work with so many of you and in the city and on the council, and there's some new faces, and I'm excited to get to know those who I don't, and watching so many of you councilors all grow and flourish, and I feel like some of us have really been in it for the long haul now, and glad to know I'm in good company, and the city has so many great volunteers, and I'm just pleased that I've had the opportunity to be one of them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Sean Flaherty, 43 Milk Street.
Thank you. Good evening, folks. It's actually 32 Milk Street. I'm a retired teacher in the city. I love living in Newburyport, but about a year ago, my wife and I decided we wanted to have a break, a change, to go live someplace else and see what that's all about. We didn't quite last a year, and we realized there's no place like home. Dorothy Gale was right. I've been saying that. For years, I've been active on various boards. I was a member of the Disabilities Commission some years ago. I served as chairman for a while. I also was on the Human Rights Commission for a number of years. And now, in my later years, my retired years, in developing some issues of my own, I feel like I have an eye for some things that might need some consideration maybe in the city. I'm retired, so I'll be around and about a lot. And if you go forward with my candidacy, well, if you go forward, Jenny won't have to listen to me complain about various things, because I would call her up on the phone and say, "Do you know what's going on?" And, but anyway, I would love to serve again on the Disabilities Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jerry Mullins, 7 Parsons Street.
Speaking in favor of the 153 Story Avenue Firehouse location, and I got all riled up when I found out that on the typo there that they had the extra funding for somehow to 95 Story Avenue. And 95 Story Avenue is something that is really only our only gateway to our city. Most of our revenue comes from ecotourism and from historic preservation. All that money comes from that central part of Newburyport. And yet when we go to Story Avenue, it's all about servicing our local residents, which is great, but it doesn't represent the gateway to the city. And right over there is the lone area on that whole stretch that really announces it's the gateway to the Essex Heritage Scenic Byway. It talks about us being the birthplace of the Coast Guard. It talks about our trails. It has a linkage between William Lloyd Garrison and the Gloria Bronhardt. All this is there, and it's the only spot left in all that stretch that really announces what our city is really all about. So I'm glad that everybody's focusing to 153 Story Avenue. I think it's going to be great. I've seen the design plans. Councilor Connell was able to show me some of the plans for that area. That's going to be tremendous. But I hate to have that delayed if somebody was focusing all their energy toward one spot, the only spot that really announces what our city is really all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane Snow, 9 Coffin Street.
Jane Snow, 9 Coffin Street. Last week was a very busy week for all of you with long evenings, but I learned a lot, and I appreciate that. One of the things that I did learn was a lot about harbor master fees. I'm not a boater, but I was so impressed with the way the committee put together their data. They went back and forth and came to a conclusion, and that was great to listen to and to learn. And the other big discussion was the fire station. And I would definitely support the fire station remaining in its current location, having a building that would be conducive to the neighbors, and so that it fits in and it's not disruptive, and the firemen can keep that nice flow back and forth that they have with the neighbors in the neighborhood. That would be a big thing. But most of all, it needs to be done yesterday so that our firemen have a safe, workable place to work out of. We forget that these firemen deal with every single person in the city, and even some two-legged persons that are in the city. They are a great group of people. They support us in so many different areas, and yet that fire station is deplorable. So I hope we get that built ASAP and work with the firemen to make sure it's a spot that really meets their needs. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Firemen and women.
That concludes public comment. Mayor's comment.
Thank you. Good evening, councilors, President Iverman, members of the City Council, members of the public here and at home. I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about the coronavirus. I think this is really significant in terms of what's happening in the world, in our country, and in our state. We have been working, our health department and public safety departments, we have been coordinating with state, regional, and local partners to make sure that we have guidance, best practices, and recommendations for our preparations. The city's health department and public safety departments have been preparing for a local outbreak. Our EMTs and paramedics from our local ambulance contractor, Cataldo, are trained to respond to infectious diseases. We have been posting information about COVID-19 or the coronavirus on our from the CDC on our public health website, and those updates are occurring as quickly as we get them, and they are coming in fairly rapidly. So I encourage everyone to go to the website. I would also encourage people to stop sending us information, because we are getting information from the state, from CDC, and we are up to date in terms of what's going on. In addition, we are working on updating information about isolation. We've had a couple cases already that people are self-isolating as a result of sons or daughters being in Italy for trips and colleges refusing to let them come back. So we're dealing with those on a case-by-case basis, and I'm sure that there will be more coming. I have included some websites in your update that you can continue to monitor and track what's happening. We are asking that people follow the protocols for good hygiene. I mean, everybody knows that. Good hand washing, stay away from people who are sick. If you're sick, stay away from people. And as I said, we will be continuing to post information as quickly as it comes in. We are also doing an internal meeting with the hospital on Thursday with our public safety personnel and school personnel to really outline, next steps in preparation. Will be more information coming to the council and to the public after that. On Friday, Frank Giacalone, our health director of our health department, our Roseanne Robillard from the Council on Aging, myself, and the superintendent of schools will be doing a public video on at the hub to try and get more information out through another source. We're posting things on social media as well as on the website, as I had said. So we will continue to keep you updated. I know that many things are being canceled. Received an email today that the Literary Festival Board of Directors is considering canceling. So more and more information is coming down like that. So just be prepared, check on different events that are happening to see if in fact that they are continuing to go forward. This is serious. This is very serious, and I encourage people to really take this serious and to, really pay attention to how you're feeling and quarantine yourself if, in fact, you do feel ill. Information on agenda items tonight. I, again, thank you for all the work that you did on the harbor master fees, and feel very confident that where you are in the process makes sense in terms of fees for all the amenities that we provide voters, and also to be able to have the start of a fund for the continuing issues of erosion and dune nourishment, et cetera, that continue to happen out on Plum Island. In terms of Station 2, I know this is for the fire station, I know this is a really difficult situation, and we stopped the process when we hadn't gotten very far with Winter Street Architects, and the price tag was already $8.9 million. And that doesn't include the fact that we would have to relocate the station, the firefighters and the trucks, and that's somewhere in the $400,000 range. We'd have to put in an elevator. We can't do solar, and there is discussion about taking additional property, which would help us with parking, but that still means that we're probably faced with over a $10 million station. The reason I asked you to, if you would take a look at the site further up at 95 Story Ave, was because that's a massive site. I think that we absolutely can support it being the gateway. It doesn't have to block all of that, and it creates the opportunity for more solar, one level, and we wouldn't have to relocate the firefighters. So that in itself could save about $1 million. I ask you to think about that as you consider your vote tonight as we look at expanding the scope in the feasibility study. You also have a statement of interest in your packet tonight that was compiled by Steve Burkholm for a repair to the roof on the high school, as well as a new wing and upgrades to our science lab. Again, the estimate is around $12 million, $14 million, but again, we won't know until we get to the feasibility phase, and that could be years down the road. This is the first step in moving the process forward, and that this is time sensitive, so I know you'll send it to committee. Steve Burkholm will be available to work with you on your questions while it's in committee, but it has to be in to April 8th to the Mass School Building Authority, so must be acted on the 30th of March, if you would be so kind. I sent you an email last week that the House finally voted on the dissolution of the Newburyport Redevelopment Authority, and we heard from the Senate that they expect to have their vote within the next 3 weeks, so we'll keep you updated on that. I wanted to let you know, in case you hadn't heard, that our building commissioner, Peter Bennett, is accepted a position in Newbury, and will be leaving this on the 13th. For his new job, and Bob, who is our local inspector, Bob Armstrong will be acting commissioner. We will post it and pull together a team to review those applicants as they come in. On Friday, we have a team going into District 4 headquarters, Mass DOT, to meet the contractor, R.M. Vasella, who was awarded the contract for Safe Routes to School, and that will be the first pre-construction meeting, and there will be a lot more information coming after that meeting. Also on Thursday, we are going into Mass DOT again to meet with their engineering consultant from HDS to our Complete Streets project, and begin to work with them around that section of the rail trail coming through Parker Street, across State Street, and then working with them on the final piece to get across Route 1. There is a water main project that will be happening down by the Rotary. This was one of the bleeders that has been out there for many, many years. It's finally going to be a completed loop that will help our water quality. We don't anticipate there being a tremendous disruption to because they're going to be working with an active line while they put in the other line, so it probably will just be a few hours at one point when they cross over, when there'll be an interruption of water services. We're completing our contract with Studio MLL Architects. I gave you their website there. Also, if you want to explore a little bit about this organization who has been awarded the feasibility study for youth services. And the Joppa boat ramp is underway. There's a little more information about that. We expect that to be completed by the end of April. We are hosting another five-year pavement management public meeting on March 24th with Beta Engineering. Encourage all to be there at 7 o'clock. And on April 2nd, Beta Engineering will be here to meet individually with counselors if they would like to set up a meeting with Matt Coogan, and he will arrange for you to sit and go over your ward or any concerns or issues you have about the paving program. There is a New England Coastal Resiliency Workshop on March 18th. I'm not sure if that will continue going forward. We have the Assets Award scheduled for March 19th, and on March 26th, the Environmental Partners is receiving an Engineering Excellence Award for their upgrades to the wastewater treatment facility. And then there's just a couple other events that I had attended. The only other thing that's not in your update that I wanted to share with you is that KP Law has been in touch with Highway Safety's insurance, and we're anticipating, I think I mentioned to you, their engineer was out a couple weeks ago and took a walk on the site. In the interim, Highway Safety came back and wanted to put a bright green epoxy over the bike lanes that they screwed up. And because they were screwed up, it would be bright green epoxy. Obviously told them absolutely not. That's not a solution to the mess they made, and so we're hoping that by the end of this week we'll have an answer from the insurance company about whether or not they accept the claim.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions, Councilor Vogel?
Any update, Mayor, on the PCBs on the rail trail?
Yes, actually, we are doing confirmatory testing, which hopefully will be completed shortly. It's taken longer, so we've had some additional costs that we didn't anticipate, but we're waiting to be sure that it's clean. There is a section that is under wires that we cannot, it's too dangerous to clean out that section, so we're hoping that EPA will bless it and we can move forward, and then at that point begin the next phase of regrading and then opening it up for use. So we're close.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Z.
I just have a few questions. Thank you, Mr. President. One is on COVID-19. Thank you for the update. Has there been any consideration for sanitizing the schools proactively or preemptively, or the fire department's stations or the police department? I know in other communities where they've had to close a school to scrub it down, I'm wondering if there's any value in doing that before we have an issue or to try and head off an issue. Or maybe you could consider that.
Well, we have brought in additional cleaning supplies, hand sanitizers within all the city departments, and have been in touch with the superintendent about the same in terms of the level of work that's happening in the schools. There is the possibility that we will be canceling some of the field trips to the Galapagos Islands and to Costa Rica, and we have a trip to Washington planned. Those are all being reviewed at this point. There is not a need or a reason at this point, given the level of sanitation that was currently underway in the schools. We don't anticipate to take it to another level. We are asking that surfaces are cleaned better and that all doorknobs and those kinds of things. But because we have not had any type of incident yet in the schools, we've had students who have, as I said, returned from Italy who have been quarantined, and therefore their families have been also self-quarantined. We are increasing our level of cleanliness in both the schools, all the schools, and in City Hall, but certainly that might become an option if we have to. But if there's nothing there now.
Yeah, I don't know how long it would be effective. I just thought I'd throw it out.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Similarly, I'm very concerned, particularly about water and sewer. I know we talk about core services, but those obviously need folks to go in at least every so often to make sure they run. So I just wanted to offer that question as well. Any special precautions at the plants being taken related to the coronavirus?
Just following the same protocol that everyone is following at this point. Making sure that the sites are well cleaned from our custodial staff or staff from DPS, and making sure that we have all wipes and hand sanitizers and all of those kinds of things.
Okay. Last question on a different topic. So Budget and Finance has been reviewing the fire station. Youth Services has kind of come from there and so forth. My question for you is, One consistent theme that seems to be coming up is the word debt exclusion, and I'm wondering if you have any comments for us on, are we heading in that direction for some or any of these projects at this point, in your opinion?
I believe that at least one of these projects would have to be a debt exclusion to, based on what happens with the feasibility studies and where we end up on the other end, either the fire station or youth services. That's what it's tentatively on the table at this point, but further decisions will be made once the feasibility studies are done.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Connell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mayor, can you give us an update on what's going on in the Phillips Drive area? I know that the neighbors are watching very closely, listening to what we say. Is there anything you can update them on or to the public at large? Because we're also talking about potentially a significant expenditure there to resolve the drainage issues.
Well, the very first thing that had to happen, which we discussed at the last public meeting, was hiring an engineer to do the study, and that RFP is on the street. And that's, that's where we are right now. And once that happens, and we have someone in place who can begin laying out all, because remember they talked about having to redo some of the engineering in the roads, so there has to be additional layer of pipes that are put in. And so we're looking for the engineering consultant to, complete all the tasks that need to happen as we go forward. So that's the first step, and that should take us into the fall before we're ready to, do anything else until we have that information.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Devlin.
Mr. President, can we remove appointment 152 from the consent agenda so I can recuse myself?
Read the consent agenda? Where are we?
While we're on that topic, anything else Councilor wants to remove before we read the agenda? Yes, Councilor, first Councilor Tantar, then Councilor Shan.
Remove communication 233.
233, okay.
Remove appointment 151.
151. All right, so with those three removals, could the clerk please read the consent agenda?
As amended, approval of the minutes for February 24th. There are 4 transfers, all going to Budget and Finance. First is transfer 69, free cash 13,000 to EMR building maintenance, 10.5, and utilities, the same building, 2.5. Transfer 70, free cash 25,000 to library maintenance, same amount. Transfer 71, receipts reserved for appropriation, fuel 80,000 to highway, fuel and oil, same amount. Transfer 72, reserved for appropriation on fuel, 22,005, water retained earnings, 7,725, and sewer retained earnings, 7,725. 2 tank upgrades, 37,950. Following communications, all the applications 4 through 12 are going to public safety. Application 4, Food Steps for Food, to be held 4/14/2020. Application 5, Cultural Revival Bazaar, 7/18 through 7/19/2020. Spring Invitation Night, 5/1/2020. Application number 7, Newburyport Spring Festival, 5/24 and 25/2020. Application 8, Newburyport Car Show, 8/20/2020. Application 9, Newburyport Fall Harvest Festival, 10/11 and 12/2020. Application 10, Witches Night Out, 10/23/2020. Application 11, Downtown Trick or Treat, 10/30/2020. Application 12, Invitation Nights, 12/4, 12/11, 12/18/2020. All those aforesaid to public safety. Following communications, 230, yearly report, Liquor Control Act to go to a license and permits. Communication 231, a letter regarding short-term rental ordinances to go to planning and development. Communication 232, annual audit, cities FY 2019 financial statements to go to budget and finance. Next communication 233 regarding MVRTA. Bus stop is removed. Appointments, first reading. First appointment 151, Joseph Morgan, is removed. Second appointment, 152, Walter Shannon, that is also removed. Next are reappointments. Appointment 153, Jane Healy, 38 Winter Street, Preservation Committee, 3/31/2023. Appointment 154, Paul Harrington, 251B High Street, Tree Commission, 3/31/2023. Appointment 155, Maurice Southworth, 12 Fruit Street, to the same Fruit Street Historic District, 5/31/2023. Following is a reappointment to be referred to Public Utilities. Appointment 156, John Tomaz, 38 Storybook Drive, to the Water Sewer Commission until 3/31/2023. Following items are removed from their respective committees. Transfer 68, Communication 226, Order 167, Order 168, all removed from Budget and Finance. Application number 1 from License and Permits. Order 166, Application 2 and 3 from Public Safety. That, with the removal of 152, 151, and Communication 233, is the consent agenda this evening.
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Let's move on. Mayor's update.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
Any debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's received and filed. Let's go to appointments.
You gotta go to
Remember that
communications.
we have the first reading on...
Point of order, wouldn't communications come before appointments?
No, they come after appointments, actually.
Okay. So we'll do appointments first, Mr. President. Second reading, appointment 147, Sean Flaherty, 32 Milk Street, Disabilities Commission till 3/1/2023. Appointment 148, Peter McNamee, 9 Otis Place, Historic Commission until 3/31/2023. Following our reappointments. Appointment 149, Jenny Donahue, 18 Cherry Street, Disabilities Commission, 3/1/2023. Appointment 150, Paul Hogg, 4 Colton Drive, Shellfish Constable, 3/1/2023. We then have the following pulled from the consent agenda. Appointment 151, Joseph Morgan, 55 Hill Street.
Motion to move to Planning and Development.
Well, let's, I'll tell you what, why don't we
Do what we...
let's
what
start
I
with the
read.
ones that you read out for the final vote. Second reading on,
That's what I should have done. Mr.
yeah,
President.
Flaherty, McNamee, Donahue, and Hogg. Is there?
Motion to approve on second reading.
Second.
Collectively, and the reappointments collectively.
I'm sorry, who was the second? Connell?
Thank you.
All right, roll call, please.
Roll call on appointments, 4 appointments mentioned. Councilor Tontar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman.
Yes.
11 yes, appointments done.
Okay, now let's go to 151 and 152.
151 is Joseph Morgan, 55 Hill Street, to the Historic Commission until 3/31/2023.
Motion to move to Planning and Development.
Second.
Any debate? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Next, 152.
152.
I'm going to
Counselor?
recuse myself. I'm going to recuse myself, Mr. President.
Okay, Councilor
Noted.
Devlin is recusing himself and leaving the chamber. Please read the item, clerk.
Appointment 152 is Walter Shannon, 43 Lime Street, Zoning Board of Appeals until 3/31/2021.
Motion to refer to Planning and Development.
Second.
Any debate on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is referred. Okay, so we had one communication.
That communication was 233. It's a letter regarding the MBRTA State Street Bus Stop Shelter.
Councilor Tatar.
In the consent agenda, it was indicated that this would go to Budget and Finance. I think it's more appropriate that it go to Neighborhood and City Services. The letter requests an appropriation for funds to build a physical bus stop shelter. The council, of course, cannot initiate spending, but what the council can do is investigate the need. And so I would suggest that we refer this to Neighborhood and City Services.
Second. Is that a motion, Daniel?
We'll take that as a form of a motion. Councilor Connell seconded. Any further debate on that issue? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's referred. Okay, so we fought our way down to orders now.
We have the first order. 172, City Council, City of Newburyport accepts with gratitude the following gift. The Joanne B. Brisman Trust, $4,793.86 for the Newburyport Youth Services Summer Camp Scholarships. Submitted, Councilor Tonto.
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance.
Second.
Any debate on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's referred.
Order 173.
Please.
City Council of the City of Newburyport hereby votes to accept the fourth paragraph of MGL 40-5B, which allows the dedication without further appropriation of all or a percentage not less than 25% of particular fees, charges, or receipts to a stabilization fund established under 40 Section 5B to be effective for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2020, or take any other action relative thereto. Submitted, Councilor Z.
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance.
Second.
Any debate? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Referred. Next item.
174, an order the City Council of the City of Newburyport by a 2/3 vote hereby dedicates 100% of the Plum Island Beach fee is dedicated to the Plum Island Beach Stabilization Fund established under 45B effective FY 2021.
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance.
Second.
Any debate? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 175.
Item 175 is submitted by Councilor Eigenman that the City of Newburyport is related to the statement of interest with respect to the aforementioned school building authority that the mayor described in our update with respect to the roof and science labs.
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance.
Second.
Don't like
Any
that?
debate on that issue?
All right,
Councilor
Yeah, go
Tantar.
ahead.
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud. I guess this doesn't belong in joint ed. In part, eventually we will have to spend money on it, but in part, I think it's also a, an assessment of the need and how it fits in. So I don't know if Budget and Finance is quite the appropriate committee to do it. Maybe, I don't know if Joint Ed is either, because it's a joint committee. But
Councilor Z, then Connell, then Khan.
Well, just real briefly, the good news is that Budget and Finance and Ed share 2 of the 3 same members. So the question is, does the at-large want to attend our meeting, basically, is what it boils down to. But I'm happy to withdraw and put in for Education. I was really split decision when I made the motion, and I can see a justification for either or both,
Are
if
you
you
withdrawing
want.
the motion?
I will.
Okay. Do we have another motion?
I withdraw my second.
Yeah, we'll motion to send it to Education.
Second.
With an invitation to the at-large counselor to attend.
Thank you.
Councilor Khan wanted to speak, yes.
Can I speak?
I yield to Councilor Khan.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President. My only reason, and I'm not saying that I don't want it in education, but one of the reasons that I am going to encourage Budget and Finance is because it is part of the CIP, and that does come before us, and I feel like this would kind of give some context and capability to ask about some of the other CIP projects that come before us anyways in Budget and Finance. So that's why I would support going to Budget and Finance.
I didn't mean to cut off Councilor Connell. I thought because it was a new motion. Did you want to speak on this?
No,
I'm
she
sorry.
expressed some of my thoughts.
Okay. Others? Okay, so the motion on the floor is to go to education. No, education.
Education, you're right.
Yeah.
Education.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
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 3 noes.
8 to 3. Okay, moving on.
Ordinances, I believe, Mr. President.
Ordinance 53.
Ordinance 53 is the establishment of the Plum Island Beach Fund at
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance.
Second.
Any debate on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's referred. Ordinance 54.
Ordinance 54 is submitted by Councilors Eigenman and Shan, and it is an amendment to the state building code, section of our ordinance, section 5-61.
Motion to refer to planning and development?
Second.
Any debate? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Ordinance 55.
Ordinance 55 likewise is jointly submitted. It's Councilors Eigenman and Wallace. It's an amendment to section 891, city to recycle and dispose properly of yard waste.
Motion to refer to public safety.
Second. Any debate? All those in favor? Oh, Councilor Z.
I was expecting neighborhood and city services, but Sarah, did you have, it was, well, it's a joint, it's parks, right, and DPS, so it kind of crosses both, I suppose.
Oh,
Councilor Wallace.
the reason I chose public services is because, public safety is because waste management typically falls under this category, and Molly Attenborough would be able to shed some light on this as well.
Fair enough, thank you.
Further debate? All those in favor?
Offended.
All those in favor of referring to public safety, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Let's go on to public safety.
Committee items.
I believe we're ready for committee items, and Budget and Finance is the first on the hit parade. Councilor Tantar.
Motion to approve Order 168, approval to pay prior year bills.
Second.
Councilor Tantar.
So this is two sets of bills, one from Veteran Services Department. These are fiscal year 19 receipts that were not submitted in a timely fashion. And then the time clock repair, which is the larger amount. Actually, the company didn't submit the invoice and found it, that was a fiscal year 18 invoice. And then they submitted it much later. And the committee voted 3-0 that we should transfer the funds to reimburse both sets of people.
Any further debate? Councilor Connell.
Thank you, Mr. President, and through you to the Chief of Staff. It was my understanding that this was supposed to be $40,000, not $50,000. What's the discrepancy between the number we heard 2 weeks ago and the number we're hearing today?
Hold on.
What are we doing?
What?
For the feasibility study.
No.
Oh, no, we're not
I
on
think
the,
there's a misunderstanding. This is Order 168, which is a total of $582.73.
You took them out of order.
Yes.
I see.
I took the easy
I
one
withdraw.
first. Sorry.
Anything on the extremely late $500-odd dollars?
Listen,
No. All those in favor of approving this, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that is approved. Anything else?
motion to approve Order 167, Harbor Master
Second.
fees.
Councilor Tantar.
Yes, as the mayor mentioned in an update, we did spend parts of three budget and finance meetings on this. So the amended version that you have was given to you in the packet, is available online, has two changes, both of which reference the fees on the Plum Island Beach parking lot. The first change is that the total resident fee remains unchanged. During the week, it's $10, and on weekends, $12. The first proposal that you saw was going to increase during the week from $10 to $12, and on weekends from $12 to $15. All right, so one change again, the fee for residents will remain the same at $10 and $12. The non-resident increase that was proposed in the first proposal stays, and that's an increase from $10 during the week to $12, and $12 on weekends to $20. The non-resident fee increases we heard in committee reflect the prices at other private lots on the island. The second change is the separation of the Plum Island parking lot fee into two parts. You will notice One part is the parking fee, all right? That's 90% of the total amount that is brought in. And 10% will be set aside for, I write beach restoration resiliency fee, but we just had a number of orders, I think, that we have to put in place before that happens. But it will be a reserve account set aside for addressing dredging and efforts to prevent the deterioration of the beach. So those actually end up being the only changes that we made from what originally came before you. The committee asked for and received comparable data on other North Shore harbor fees. In addition, we examined the harbor enterprise revenue and expenditures, the Harbor Commission budget, with projections toward fiscal year 23. So fiscal year 20 projections, without an increase in fees, indicate a projection of a $60,000 deficit in this current fiscal year. I want to make clear that both the harbor master, the chair of the Harbor Commission, and commissioners have indicated to me that the harbor master would see to it that at the end of fiscal year 20 there was, even if we didn't pass these fees, that there would not be a deficit because he'd cut so that to balance the budget. Nevertheless, the projections, if we don't do anything, indicate the possibility of a deficit. Out years with the fee increases show pretty much of a balanced budget, pretty close, but then it's an enterprise fund and it should be balanced, all right? Thirdly, waterway permits we asked for information on North Shore and Massachusetts communities, and for waterway permits, the average is $4.56. The proposal is a fee increase from $4 to $5, so the committee felt that increase was warranted. Mooring fees, the average of comparable schools was Comparable harbors was $7.08. Newburyport is proposed as $4. And the dinghy dock, the average is $2.23. Newburyport proposal is $2.50. The commercial fish pier, proposal is to increase from $1,200 to $1,700. However, the $500 hoist fee and parking fees would be wrapped into that, so that's a wash. The $1,700 increase is the same as previously, but it was split into two, $1,200 plus $500 for use of the hoist and parking. 7, the transient dock fee, we get comparable information. The range is, depends on the size of the boat. In the comparable harbors is $5.68 to $6.98, whereas the Newburyport proposed rates are $3 to $6. Finally, I just wanted to note that the Harbor Reserve Fund balance is currently about $501,000, and the Harbor Commission and the Harbor Master indicate that they would prefer to keep 1 year sort of a budget in the reserve for contingencies. The fees that they bring in are very much subject to two things that cannot be controlled by them. One is the weather, and the second is the business cycle. All right, so if you have a downturn both simultaneously, it could hit them hard. So the vote out of committee was to recommend approval by a 3-0 vote. And we have the Harbor Master and the Chair of the Harbor Commission here to answer any questions.
Councilor Zede.
Yeah, I think the chair did a great job of summarizing the process. So I just wanted to add just my thoughts on a couple things. One is the harbor, the only thing I could add to the summation of how we got here was that following the amendments in committee, the Harbor Commission met subsequently the next Monday and discussed this favorably. So I wanted to let you know that this was a nice collaborative effort. They sort of came in and said, can we do this? We said, well, what about this? And they went back and talked about it. And that's how we kind of harmonized on the proposal you see before you. So that's one thing. Second thing is, I wanted to explain the Plum Island thing a little bit more just to make sure it's 100% clear. So This idea of dedicating some money that is generated in the lot to the beach, I'll call it, is a very general term which encompasses dredging, keeping the beach clean, beach nourishments, et cetera. Obviously, erosion is the king of the castle right now, but it's not the only issue we've ever faced on the beach. Has been around for quite some time. And so this fee increase offered, I think, a good opportunity to talk about it. And so that's how we ended up with that in the discussion. Now, why is it structured this way? Working with Ethan Manning, finance director, originally had proposed in committee, we'll just say 10% of the fee goes to the fund, and then you don't have to have these separate columns. We have learned that in Chapter 40, Section 5B, you cannot dedicate less than 25% of a fee to a fund. So in order to still get to the end result, which is sort of philosophically what we agreed on, we have these two separate columns so that you can dedicate 100% of the column that says Plum Island Beach Fee to that fund, which you have seen a preview of tonight, would be established by a combination of accepting a section, establishing the fund, and then dedicating 100% of what you see in this column to that fund. And just to give you some more comfort, the fund, which we will talk about in a subsequent meeting, is basically modeled after the Plum Island sewer fund that we created when we accepted the settlement. So it's basically the same thing, just takes a little bit more rigmarole to get there. As far as the fees themselves, I think we've struck a fair deal here. The most important thing, I think, for many was protecting residents from fee increases. We achieved that here. I think everybody could hopefully feel good about that. We did have a lot of discussion on non-residents. And again, we're provided with comps there. So I'm going to support this as it is, and I think it's a good way forward. And I felt the same level of comfort on the other comps that were provided on the waterways fees and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Khan.
Great. Thank you, Council President. I did want to add a couple more things, and I thought excellent narrative by our chair as well as the other member from Budget and Finance. But a few things that for me were really educational during this process was the Harbor Commission themselves too, and their deliberations prior to setting the rates. And it was very helpful having many members of the Harbor Commission come to the meetings and give us a little bit of some insight into that process. A couple of things I want to point out that are not obvious that I really think are important and worth mentioning is, for example, the commercial fish pier. And one of the things I learned through that process is, while it seems like an increase of from $1,200 to $1,700, it's actually $500 is typically used for the hoist itself, and they collapse the two to make it $1,700. So I think that's really important because otherwise that was something that just stood out as why is that increasing so much. The other thing I learned was whatever is collected from that line item goes towards that commercial fish pier and that hoist and improvements to that. So that was another educational thing for me, is that specific line items are dedicated to spending money for those specific aspects of this. So again, it was a great process, a lot learned, and I think other councilors attended. I think we learned a lot from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other councilors? Councilor Wallace.
I generally agree with the fee increases. They were last increased, from what I understand, 5 years ago. The one number that stood out to me is for the non-resident weekend rate of $20 for the lot. I do feel that's a bit high, and I would like to see it maybe in the $15 to $16 range.
Is that a motion, Councilor, for amendment?
Sure. Motion to...
It's currently $18 is my understanding.
I'm sorry, the total, I should say the total charge. So it would be a motion...
May I ask the chair, what is the current charge? I'm sorry.
$12.
$12. So your motion is?
To revise on the table here,
Yep.
The non-resident weekend and holiday total charge to $15.
$15. Okay. And so the beach fee would remain 10%?
Would have to change.
10% of that.
10%.
Is there a second?
Can I chime in before we go?
You need a second to...
Well, I need a second. Well, I'll second it.
I'll second.
Go ahead for a second.
I'll second.
Councilor Devlin has seconded. Councilor Lane.
Just to follow up on that comment, I thought the 20 was high myself. I feel that longer hours would benefit that lot as well, and more structure it like a typical beach parking lot where you would have, that higher fee would make sense in peak hours, but then during the course of the day, it would decrease down. Just my 2 cents here. I know there's a lot of traffic that comes in through the party boats and everything else after hours. There's cruises, there's various things that we could capitalize on. I think we need to explore those avenues, because rainy days are rainy days now, but when we implement the flagging system, if we get red flags for 3 days after a heavy rain, that's going to affect us as well. So I think longer hours and trying to capitalize more money would make absolute sense. I do think I will agree with the Ward 4 councilor, sorry, that it did kind of stick out as a big jump for non-residents, but I feel like the offset could be longer hours.
Is that a proposed motion or to amend, or?
No, I'm good with what.
Okay.
Good.
Other councilors? Okay, so the amendment on the floor is to change it to $15 total charge, meaning the beach fee is $150 and the parking fee is $13.50. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
No.
I counted as 3 to 8.
I have,
The motion
I have
fails.
3 yeses.
Yeah. 3 to 8,
noes.
motion fails.
Motion fails.
Any other motions to amend or other parliamentary motions? Councilor Z?
I did forget to make one comment that I promised a resident I would make, and the Ward 6 councilor reminded me, which is that residents have asked about extending the hours. So I think that would be something that would lie more with the Harbor Commission to discuss if they want to expand that operation. But that did come up in committee, and for the residents, asked me about that. And it comes in 2 forms. One is actually starting the season earlier, potentially collecting, before, say, Memorial Day is sort of the bellwether, and the other is going later in the day. So I promised the resident I would mention on the floor. I'm doing so. I think the Harbor Commission can do a little bit more refined analysis to see if that makes sense. And I certainly think in committee there was also good discussion on that, so something to consider.
Any further comments? The motion on the floor is to approve as recommended out of committee. So I'm not seeing any. Okay, all those in favor, please say, wait a second, this is a fee schedule. I'd like to take a roll call on it.
Roll call, motion to approve Order 167 as is. Councilor Tantar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman.
Yes.
11 yes, motion passes.
Another item, Councilor Tantar.
Yes. Motion to remove transfer 68, free cash $50K to Fire Station Number 2, design feasibility study.
Second.
Councilor Tantar.
I will explain why it came in
Yeah.
at 40,000 rather than 50.
50 rather than 40.
So again, this is another measure that we had in Budget and Finance for at least 3 meetings. First of all, I would like to note a typo that occurred, and that's in the list of tasks, the last page. In your packet, under design fee recap, the amounts were correct, but the descriptors were incorrect. They had just been, by Winter Street, they'd just been carried over from the previous proposal. So you have on your desk a correction. So again, the amounts are correct. I want to acknowledge the Council President for having picked up on this. I just looked at the numbers. The Council President picked up the descriptors. That kind of figures, right? Sorry. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you have on your desk a 4-page proposal from Winter GEC, LLC. And we only, in our packet, we only received pages 1 and 3. Pages 2 and 4 were not in the packet. You now have pages 2 and 4. And page 4 includes the total fee amount, which comes to $3,750. And that's for the surveying work to be done. I'm going to take credit for picking that one up. Okay, now, the total cost comes to $49,400 for both pieces. That actually comes to a little more than that. But we have $12,951 left over from the $75,000 that was appropriated for the first feasibility study. That will be applied to that. That comes down to $36,449, right? Then you add the $3,750 from the Winter Street GEC that was not that's different from Winter Street. It's not Winter Street. Is it Winter Street? Yeah, it is Winter Street. It is different from the Winter Street architects. And you come actually to $4,199. $40,199. All right, that's how we ended up with 40,000 rather than 50. You following me now? No. That large concept. So
What's the total? Because that's unclear.
The total that you have transferred is requested is 40,000. All right. The total expense is actually $40,199. So I might move to amend in a minute, but at first I want to get through this. All right. So there is the significant change in the tasks from the first proposal. The first proposal was designed a new 3-bay station at 95 Story Ave, design new headquarters at 95 Story Ave. 95 Story Avenue is across from C&J. All right. It was going to renovate Zero Greenleaf, the current headquarters, as a substation. That was the previous proposed. And modernize, with an addition, the Greenleaf as headquarters. So the thinking in the first proposal was to get a feasibility study for relocating headquarters to 95 Story and make current headquarters into a substation, but also consider keeping the current headquarters as the headquarters. All right. And then the fifth task was selected scheme development and cost estimate. The revised task, all right, task number 1 is $20,200 to renovate, get a schematic design for renovation additions to headquarters at Zero Greenleaf. So there was no sentiment in the committee to examine moving headquarters to 95 Story Ave. So that was taken out. There was more money in this feasibility study. There was sentiment in the committee, all right, to have a good study of the city's, the department's needs at Zero Greenleaf, all right? And that's estimate of that is $20,200. It would also entail an addition of putting a training room and emergency operations center at the headquarters, where the chief said it really belonged where the chief and deputies are, because they would be using the emergency operations. All right. The second task is this that was controversial in committee, and does not come to you with a recommendation from the committee, which is to do a schematic design of a new 3-bay station at 95 Story Avenue. All right, we put that in there, the administration, and I support this. I want a feasibility study on that site so we can compare it to the alternate site, which is the current site at 153 Story Avenue. Thirdly, complete the existing 3-bay design at 153 Story Avenue, update the schematics, value engineering for cost savings, locate appropriate alternate living and operating location while construction proceeds. There was a desire by the majority of the committee to move forward to get more information on the building a site at the current location, and this task moves that along. All right. Fourth, alternate scenario for 153 Story Ave, based on potential for expanded site. There's a possibility the committee wanted to take another look at acquiring neighboring property there, and so that, of course, if we had more property, we would be able to redesign potentially, and we wanted that to be done. All right. Finally, the last task is a summary of all the findings in memo form, and also a public meeting to be held to discuss the findings. Right? So I think I'll open this up for discussion. I reserve the right later to come in with amendment for that extra $199. But I try to shape the debate. I think the question before you is whether or not you want to allocate approximately $10,000 to have an alternate to doing it at the current site. Because it might come in at less money and might be superior. I'm done.
Councilor Khan.
Thank you, Council President. I will just stand up and say I do not support us spending any money for 95 Story Ave. And the reason being is we've spent, I don't know if we had 3 meetings on this topic or so, but a lot of the conversation focused a little bit about understanding what the exact, what's the need for the city in terms of the capabilities we have. So we have our headquarters that is desperately needed to be updated, as well as the West End Fire Station. And the allocation of this additional site seemed to have come from a mechanism that many of us were trying to really understand. And after conversations with all the parties that were attending, there was really no clear indicator to me of why 95 Story Ave was even being considered. And considering that the amount of money, $10,000 to be there, I did understand from our last meeting that, maybe looking at an alternative site. But it was very clear to me from our conversations that it was not going to be 95 Story Ave. And for many reasons, I feel like if we were to allocate and say specifically go here, we're really limiting looking at maybe some potential other locations. It's almost like we've made up our mind that this is going to be the place. And I think it was very clear that that's not something that many of us felt would be the best. And we were really interested in just keeping the current location more developed and understood in terms of schematics, expanding with the associated property next door. So I wanted to just share right now that I do not support that additional task. Task 2, I think, is what it is here.
Do you want to put that in the form of an amendment, or?
I will wait for the debate before I go ahead with that amendment. Thank you.
Councilor Z.
Yeah, thank you. So just a couple of notes. We did have very good discussion, and I think it was just good to have it out, so to say. We did have the fire chief with us, so we got to talk a little bit about sort of operational needs and so forth. I think one thing I learned was shedding a little bit more light on the potential needs at Greenleaf. To be honest, I don't think that was at the forefront of my consideration. The chief made it clear that he feels, to me anyways, my perception is almost as strongly about needs at Greenleaf as actually he does at needs at the West End Station. So that was a little bit of news, particularly when compared to sort of the CIP and the levels and the years that they're put in there. So that was a good discussion, positive discussion. Next thing I want to say is that the 95 Story Ave, just to get right into it, there were sort of two justifications or reasons to consider that new site. One was the cost savings, potential cost savings, and that one you heard a little bit more about tonight. And the second was to potentially relocate headquarters, or some part of it, let's call it. I think that the at-large councilor summarized it well. Moving headquarters is sort of a non-starter, in my opinion, in my perception, having listened to the meeting. So that reason is out. As far as the cost savings go, there really hasn't been proven or shown that there's any path to cost savings. So the argument is like chicken or the egg. Well, we need the money to prove there's cost savings, but we're confident that there could be cost savings. So you keep going around and around, chicken or the egg. I don't support task 2 at all. I think that ship has sailed. It's time to move forward for a variety of reasons, and one of them is time, right? Time is important, as you heard from the public. Moving forward with that station is important, and we've been sort of mired in this study for a while. If you recall, we approved the $75,000 in the last session. I believe it was sometime mid last year. I didn't look up the exact date. So we've been studying this for a while. It's kind of time to move forward. Second thing is, on the cost savings, the mayor mentioned $1 million of potential cost savings in her mayor's update tonight, and said that the 8.8 didn't include, for example, temporary relocation, and that the elevator is very costly. But the cost estimate I was provided does include relocation. It was estimated to be about $200,000. Now I'm told there may be other costs, but you can only go by what's written. So I'm going to take a bit of a sharper position, and I'm going to motion to strike task 2 and strike the associated survey from this transfer, which would reduce it by approximately $14,000. So you've got about $10,000 in task 2, and you've got about $3,800. So if you'll forgive my rounding, Ethan is got the calculator and he can figure out the exact amount. But for discussion, I'm putting that out there, and I'm basically saying with that motion, it's time to basically start sharpening up the pencil point on 153 Story Ave. I do support studying both, finishing sort of the study and really for me the value engineering on the existing design that's been out there now is public, and considering the cost differential on acquiring the land and what that might look like and how the numbers work out. Beyond that, and I do support studying Greenleaf. Beyond that, I'd like to move forward.
All right, there's a motion made to strike task 2 and also the survey, second by Councilor Khan. Discussion on the motion to amend to strike task 2 and the survey. Councilor McCauley.
Council President, I stand in support of the at-large councilor and the councilor from Ward 1 in their comment. I think what we've seen here in the debate that happened in Budget and Finance was, it was a good debate, it was good conversation, it cut to the bone of what we needed and what we didn't need going forward. I think that, I think in the scheme of things, we probably can do the math in our heads at a high level, right? We're talking about the same size station. It's 8,000 square feet or so, $700 a square foot in estimated building costs for this. We know what the cost of both stations will be. What we don't know, which we can, I think, do the quick math on, is that there's an incredible amount of money that would need to happen to clean up the traffic at 95 Story, and you balance that with land acquisition as well as building a temporary station. And quite frankly, I think they're close enough to be a wash overall at high-level numbers that I don't think we need a design. I don't think we need an architect to give us a design to tell us we have the exact same building costs in location 1 or location 2, and we look at the macroeconomic type of factors that bear down on that, namely traffic mitigation, rebuilding of the ramp, rebuilding of the signaling versus land acquisition. So I stand in support of that, and stand in support of the amendment.
Mr. Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too stand in support of the three councilors speaking before me, especially the comment on the macroeconomics. I understand that well. That was a joke. The thing that speaks to me, I think, mostly is that in terms of the 95 Story Avenue, in the conversations at the Budget and Finance meetings, where the relocation of the lighting, the traffic lights, and just traffic flow and all of that, that speaks to me. And also, you can't help but taking notice of the introduction to the city. And I agree with the speaker at public comment, Mr. Mullins. Respect him immensely and all that work that's gone on over there. So I too stand in support of taking back that the study for the 95. Thank you.
Further debate. Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, I'm going to vote against this. I am. There's another element that we discussed. Hey, there are no other sites. Right? There isn't the possibility if we don't choose this site that we're going to fight. In taking this vote, right, we are going to locate at rebuild the station on site at 153 Story Ave. Whatever that costs, we will appropriate those funds. All right. So what we're agreeing to do, if this passes, is we're saying we don't want to examine the potential that we might have a better building, a better site at a better location. That's all a feasibility study would do. It would give us more information to make a more informed decision. And so by voting to support this, right, you are voting, all right, to have less information to make a decision. I won't talk about what macroeconomics means. I think it's not what was used.
Further debate. Councilor Wallace.
I'm in agreement with the councilors that with this motion. I believe that once it's settled, the design could move forward at these locations. We also could say, well, maybe we do want to look elsewhere, but I think right now, it sounds like our first choice for these sites are where we have them and not disturbing another site. So I wouldn't say that it's off the table, but for tonight, I think it's off the table.
Councilor Ling.
I won't be the broken record. I support it as well in the amendment. My question is more of towards task 5, the public presentation of comparative scenarios. So does this amendment take into that account that $7,100?
No. Well, let's dispose of this amendment, and we can address task 5 in another amendment if you wish. You can amend the amendment if you want.
I mean, I would like to have that removed as well. I mean, the public presentation of comparative scenarios, I don't think we need that as well. I mean, it's $7,100 for, we're going to get the report, right, when we pay for it. So.
And then really, Councilor, just a procedural question. Do you want it to be part of this motion, or you would make an amendment?
Yeah,
or you could
strike that as well from this as well, the $7,100 for the presentation of comparative scenarios.
Hold on. Well, first of all, I need a second. I'm not hearing a second. There's no second on that. I'm sorry, Councilor.
That's okay.
And again, your motion was to amend the amendment.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
Sure.
You can bring a separate motion to amend after we dispose of this one. You can.
Okay.
You can. Hold on.
I have already spoken, so.
Yes, Councilor Connell.
Thank you, Mr. President, and through you to the members. I'm somewhat puzzled by the inclination to make a decision of this significance without as much information about alternatives as we might otherwise obtain. For $10,000, it seems to me, on a multi-million-dollar potential project involving more than one facility, it seems to me that we should get as much information about the options that are before us, potentially, as we can. And by blinding ourselves, we miss the opportunity to explore whether or not it's feasible, from an economic standpoint, from an operations standpoint, from the standpoint of a disruption to the services we currently provide to people throughout the city. We miss the opportunity to get the best possible option before us. So I oppose the amendment for those reasons. We have, through the years, on the construction of a library, a high school, a middle school, all of our schools, frankly, reconstruction of our sewer project, reconstruction of our water treatment facility. Let's recall what happened when, through a value engineering exercise, the odor control measures for the sewer plant were deleted from the upgrade and renovation of the facility. What we had to do was come back 2 years later, after the project was closed out, to say, wait a minute, we missed something here, because we didn't have all the information fully before us at the time. Now, this council was actually through the Water and Sewer Commission. So I'm a strong believer in getting as much information for $10,000 on what could be a $10 million project. It seems to me that's money well spent. Let's get as much information before us, whether or not we go to a new site or not. But let's make that decision fully informed.
Thank you. Before I go to councilors who have spoken before, do either Councilors Devlin or Shand wish to speak? Councilor Shand.
Yes, thank you, Council President. So I went to the Budget and Finance meeting, and I stand in support of striking task 2. I think it was loud and clear that the chief was interested in making sure that he had a training facility and an EOC, and that we all agree that the Greenleaf Street should remain as our headquarters. So I agree. We should stick with, I want to make sure I get the right address, make sure 95 Story Ave is not on the page, and 153 is. And we work to make sure that Greenleaf Street gets its roof fixed as well.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes, I was ready to vote, so that's why I was speaking. I'm in support of this amendment, and you can make this decision if you, based on the facts before us, empirically and otherwise, that's not a good location for the fire station.
Any further debate now that we've heard from everyone? Just a second. Any further debate from councilors? Councilor Vogel.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I agree. I feel as though through those budget and finance meetings, I heard enough information. Intuitively, also with regard to the aesthetics, I think it's time to move forward. And I'm very comfortable with the information I have so far.
Chief of Staff Coogan wished to be recognized. You wish to make a statement?
Sure.
I just wanted to, I heard a couple of comments and questions, and I just wanted to provide a little bit of comment from the administration side. The purpose of this feasibility study, the purpose why we paused on the existing feasibility study and came back to the council for more funding to broaden the scope was about information. There was a building committee that consisted of several of the city councilors here and some former councilors, several firefighters, in addition to the chief and the deputy chief. We also had DPS and our planning department, and the mayor and myself sat on the building committee. And we went through a process with Winter Street and came to the roughly $8.9 million price tag for redoing the existing site for a three-bay, 5-bedroom fire station with the existing footprint. And at that point, the decision was, rather than continuing going forward, let's consider other sites. I know at some point there was talk about not only considering another site, but maybe reshuffling how the operations of the fire station functions. That's no longer on the table. That was definitely discussed at length at Budget and Finance. That is no longer the question. The question now is, what the administration is offering to councilors is information of choices. There is an additional site. We've looked at lots of different sites throughout the city. This is the only site that we've been able to identify. Unfortunately, for better or for worse, the 95-story Ave in addition to 153. We are no longer looking at any additional sites right now. We also understand if it is the council's decision not to look at an additional site, we will go forward, and we will go forward with programming and going to the council with construction money for construction documents and ultimately some bond funding to go for a building on 153-story Ave. We will honor the request of the council at this point. Again, what we were looking to do was provide information. We wanted to provide the councilors with 3 different options. We have the existing site at 153. We have the potential of expanding that site if we were able to acquire a property next door. And then we have a site that's fairly close by. I don't know the exact footage, but I'd say it's less than a quarter of a mile away. That obviously has some challenges, but what it does have that 153 does not have, it has more land. And with more land, there is the potential to program a similar fire station at 153, potentially for a reduced cost. And the reason why the administration is doing that, as the mayor mentioned before with the question that the ward councilor, the Ward 1 councilor asked, will there be a debt exclusion coming up? There are lots of needs for this community. There are lots of big ticket items. There's lots of capital needs for this community. And we wanted to provide the councilors the information necessary so that when we go out to the taxpayer and explain our capital improvements and why we're going for bonding and why we're debt excluding, that we left no stone unturned when we did this feasibility study.
Thank you. Further debate on the motion to amend? Seeing none, I think we can just do a voice vote, given the numbers. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Nay. 3 nays.
That would be Councilor Tontar, Councilor Eigenman, and Councilor Connell.
Motion passes.
Motion passes.
Further motions. Motion, for example, sorry, Councilor Z.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. So now that we've dispensed with that, I do want to tackle Task 7 because I do share some concerns with the Ward 6 councilor as he was getting started. So for the purposes of discussion now, I make a motion to strike Task 5 and ask for a second, or we can discuss it.
Second. Second from Councilor Lane. You're the moving party. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just, actually, what gave me the most heartburn about this, and I recognize that there was some involvement with this task in the original proposal, is just that $7,100 seems like a bit much for the task. So I think maybe a good place is maybe the description isn't telling me enough to give an opportunity for fair discussion. What I would personally like to do is see the kind of other tasks catch up and then give the council an opportunity to review. It has proven to be fruitful when we had the Budget and Finance. Before we go out and say for $7,100, we go and we have 3 public meetings when we don't know our own heads from our own tails. So I'd like to hear if there is, if this was a $1,500 task, I don't think you'd see me standing up, but I'd like a justification for almost the same amount it would cost to study an entire site apparently and design a schematic. You've got 71 versus 10 that we just defeated, so.
Further debate? Not seeing any. Oh, Councilor Khan.
Well, I mean, thank you, Council President. I will not support this strike just because working through other RFQs where we, as engineers, do some of these assessments, and I know the cost that it might take. And when we talk about alternative sites, I don't know if that's what that could be expanded to, is even at the current location for the West End Fire Station, if there could be some scenarios looked at in terms of, based on the design, if it's going to be 2 stories or if they're expanding, there might be some room in presenting the different scenarios at one location. So I kind of like to have some buffer for the engineering services or assessment or presentation services that might come from this task. But I know I saw Jordy Binding earlier, so if he wanted to speak to this, I'd welcome that.
Before we go to staff, Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, I very much would like to make sure that there is a public meeting, that there is a written final report. So I need some of that money in there. There also are 2 alternatives that if this body doesn't further reduce our feasibilities, our chances here, all right? There's a possibility of what you currently had, which is located just on that one, what the chief refers to as postage stamp, all right? Or secondly, if we can acquire more land next to it. So there will be at least 2 possibilities to look at. So I would like a full report that compares. I want more information, all right? And I want those 2 possibilities compared. I mean, without that extra property, we might end up with people parking on the street. I mean, it's real tough. The opportunity for zero energy on that site, on that postage stamp, is 0. All right, so you've already taken out some of the real possibilities here. Please don't take out any more.
Councilor Vogel.
Thank you. Well, I agree. I do think that we need the information, but at the same time, we've just really quite defined the number of tasks. So we have $7,000 to present all of these above alternatives, whereas we took out comparing the alternative, the land use alternative. So we've taken out comparing the 2 building sites. I'd like to see us go one step further and take that out. Let us get some more information. Let us see some of this come at us, and then when the time comes, let's get a fee for the feasibility for this, not the feasibility, but for the presentation and for the public hearing and so on and so forth. I don't see why we have to include that in there now when we've just taken a major task out. That's the way that I see it.
Councilor Wallace.
I agree with the councilor at large here. I think it can be phased. Again, we've got some concrete tasks that I think we can agree on, and this process has been ever-changing. So I think it doesn't hurt to just wait and see what we may need. So it's not to say that it would be off the table in the future, but again, I think it'd be better to have a little more understanding of where we're at in the process. Thank you.
Does staff want to speak before I go back around? Mr. Vining.
You're up. Just a quick comment. So the city does have an existing contract with Winter Street Architects. The city signed that actually before I came back to the city. And that contract included finishing the existing schematic design on 153 Story Ave, and it included this what we're calling task number 5 here, of following through with public meetings and PowerPoint presentations and written reports that summarize all the issues at play and architects' recommendations, whether it's about energy systems, whether it's about pros and cons of different layouts and so forth. We've had several counselors during this process ask us for reports like that, and the end of a feasibility study needs to have a conclusion rather than a grab bag of documents that I have to sort of hold up different things like I did in a Budget and Finance Committee meeting to try to explain them. So we put those in this document to try to show the sort of full range of work that's remaining. Essentially, we have an existing contract with Winter Street, which, if nothing else happened, we'd finish the existing feasibility study, which includes finishing the work we have that is unfinished currently, but finishing the work at 153 Story Ave, and then seeing through the process with public meetings and a written report so that the council and the leadership of the city could then make a decision going forward. And the transfer request that's before you, again, as directed by the city councilors involved, has been for the new tasks. So I would ask you to allow the process to complete and make decisions on what sites we should be looking at, and if you want additional money spent on an alternative at the existing site, so be it. But I would encourage us not to shortchange the process, so we have good information at the end.
Before you leave, just a point of information. I'm not going to speak on the debate, but the line item was how much? 7,100?
I think that's
so
right.
Given that one of the scenarios was cut, does that number change? That's my only question.
I don't think that changes. The point of that task is, regardless of whatever comes out of the feasibility study, whether we're looking at 5 different sites and 10 different alternatives or one, we need to have a final report that explains the whole process, all the sets of recommendations. So I think that doesn't change it.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. So new councilors who haven't spoken yet, and then I'll go back around. Councilor Zeid was waiting.
I've spoken though, so I'll yield.
Councilor
to others,
Wallace.
and I'll come back.
Yeah, I don't disagree that that we should have a final report, and I think maybe that could be included. What I would like to see for the public presentation is to have it during the design, not at the end, because you're going to want input. So once you have a rough design, that's when you want to have your public presentation, and people can look at it, make comments, and then you can incorporate it into the final product. Because with just the fire station committee, I don't even know who's on the committee. I just think it'd be better to get people involved in the process earlier. Thank you.
Well, Councilor Khan, and then we'll go back to staff.
Okay, thank you, Council President. And then I hope, so let me just say, I was one of the councilors that actually asked Jordy, I'm sorry, I forgot your title, the director of, works in the planning department. But I looked at other communities and cities that had done this type of project, and they had done a big, like renovation of their fire stations, their headquarters. And I sent all these presentations and these videos I found of public meetings where they presented and talked about it and had different designs and communications with the public. And I said, why don't we have something like this? And that's what this task is. So throughout the process, there is that kind of mechanism where the person and the consultant comes, and there are several, I think there's a few meetings that are actually held with the public. So I found a lot of value. The presentation and several documents are available on a website, and Northborough, if anyone wants to look at it, that was the city where I was really saw a great model of how it was done in a way that was transparent to residents too, on the reason for moving in the direction that you are, because residents are going to have to buy in some way. We talked about how are we paying for this. That needs to be there for residents to understand. And right now, when I was just trying to find information on why are we looking at doing X, Y, Z, why do we need to move headquarters? What are the actual needs of our city? How do other fire stations, given the city of our size, how are they developed? What are they looking at? And those presentations not only had the end result of the schematics, but they also gave that context by interviewing people to come up with, here's the story of why we're doing what we're doing. So I'm in a big favor of this task. Thank you.
Mr. Vining, you wanted to speak?
Just wanted to quickly respond to Councilor Wallace. The sequencing of when public meetings happens is certainly a fluid one and can easily happen early on. The fact that it's task 5 doesn't mean that everything else is completed and then we do task 5. So there's meetings that should happen through the process. But if we somehow strike that and substitute other tasks, then we won't have the advantage of having our consultants available to put together a presentation and be at the meetings and answer questions and help us present the data to the public and to the leadership.
All right, Councilor Shan. Well, we'll give you a chance. Councilor Shan, though.
So I agree with my fellow counselor and fellow engineer. It's like at the very end of something, when you want to wrap something up and you want to actually show what's been done and get buy-in from people, you do need to have the public meetings. You need to get the buy-in all along, and you need to show the presentation and show what you've got. So I agree. I realize the task seems expensive, but it would probably behoove us to accept this and do the right thing so at the very end we at least have something to look at, not to what Jordy said, Jordy showing a bunch of PowerPoints himself. Let's use our consultant, let's do the right thing, and I would support this task.
I'm going to go back to Councilor Wallace so she has it fresh in her mind, and then I'll get everyone.
I think the councilor at large mentioned that there are other public meeting tasks, I think, but I noticed in here, I don't see any other public meeting deliverables, and it's only, it looks like the only discussion is with the fire station group. So whether it's, maybe during this group they could invite other counselors, or I just think having more input along the way, whether it be the public or the counselors, is kind of where I'm going with this. I don't disagree that there should be a, presentation at the end, but I want to make sure there's input all the way through. Thank you.
I haven't forgotten this side. I think Councilor Zeed, then I'll go to Tontar, then I'll go to Vogel.
Just very briefly, I don't think this task provides more information personally. I think the information, so for me, what the turning point on this discussion was really getting the underlying data that was from the last one. And I felt one of my big complaints, frankly, was that we felt like we hadn't ingested that information. We were already ready to make other things. And I gathered that others were more involved at different times, and some are still with us here in the council, some aren't. That's great. But that's really what blew this open for me and helped me actually understand what we were talking about. So that's point number one. Point number two is, I don't think anybody's arguing that we don't need a public process, we don't need meetings, it's a question of timing. And so I think what we are supposed to do, our job is to wrap our heads around this thing and try and understand it first, and then go out and try and explain what we are planning to do and how we got there. And that includes showing, so it's a question of timing. I have to say, I want more stops at the city council. I want the train to stop at the city council more frequently. I want to do tasks 3 and 4, and then I want to see the data, and then we can authorize task 5 and say, okay, now we've got 2, we can wrap our heads around it, and who knows what conclusion we come to at that point, but we come to some kind of a conclusion, which is go, no go, more study, right? Those are probably the 3 paths, and then you come back and say, okay, now we understand it, let's go and talk to people about it. Because I can tell you, based on what we just went through, which I'm, talk about the numbers not making sense, I'm kind of don't understand how what we just did cost us $60,000, 62, and then we can do all these studies now for like 20 and 10. It's kind of a little bit amorphous to me. I don't get that, but I'm moving along. So that's my argument there.
Yeah, there is a learning curve to this, and I had to go through it. What we're doing now with these feasibility studies is the selection of a location, all right, and we also have the central station, all right. And once we select the station, there will be a process where an architect will be selected for actually designing the finished product. Generally, from what I now understand, that will be a very much entail a public process. We're getting nowhere near a final design here. This is A, to find out what we need to have done at the central station, right? B, all right, to find 1 or 2 locations, current location, or if we can acquire the land next door, all right? And our $7,100 is going to do a good part of it, I think, is reporting on that central fire station. I want to hear that. And I think the public wants to hear that. And I think firefighters should want to hear what they think needs to be done, right? My understanding is, what, $500,000? Am I in the ballpark for the actual design of the fire station? And all the public, maybe $500,000 or $600,000. So that's a very public process where you get a lot of input from a lot of different parties. We're nowhere near that. We're not ready to have that done yet. All right, and no one's asking for money to do it. This is just money to finish off the feasibility studies. All right, and I'd entertain can I make an amendment to your motion? cut it by 710%. All right, you want to cut it by 20%? Cut it by 20%. But I want some money in there to have a public meeting. I want to hear their results in the Central Fire Station. I have no doubt that I want to hear that.
Councilor, are you actually making an amendment, or were you amendment to an amendment? You can.
Yeah, I would amend that we cut the $7,100 by 20%. That would be $1,420, because the total project we were asking for was $50,000. The task that you cut out was about approximately $10,000, which is 20%. So.
Second.
Thank you.
Second. I second that motion. Okay. Any debate on the motion to cut it by 10%? Councilor Devlin.
Beyond that, that was going to be one of my suggestions. Is it has reduced, the scope of the project has reduced. I was going to suggest $5,000, so this is in line with that. That was it. Thank you.
Point of order.
I'll accept it.
Just on the amendment, the amendment put forth by Councilor Tantar
Point
to
of
go
order.
to 10%. Yes?
I thought it was 20%.
20.
I did say 20%.
Okay, sorry, 20%.
$1,420.
Councilor Vogel was waiting, so I'm going to skip and then go back to Councilor. Go ahead.
If I may have just a little bit of liberty.
Well, I'll give you a little.
Okay, thank you. Greatly appreciate it. I'm persuaded, I'm not persuaded, it's clearly in evidence that we need to have a presentation, that we need to have the professionals come in here. I get all that. There's no argument. And I was pretty closely persuaded by Jordy's presentation as he put that out there. But then as I read this, the deliverables for the $7,100, a summary memo report, and then the meetings, a public meeting, a public committee final review, and a public meeting. What I heard from Jordy, as I was almost persuaded, was that there will be meetings all along, and then I heard from Councilor Tantar, I agree, there will be meetings all along because we need to go into another phase. My objection was the $7,100 seemed like a lot of money for these, what are essentially these 3 deliverables. But okay, I will stand in favor of cutting it by 20% and move on from there.
On the motion to cut by 20%, Councilor Z.
I was going to say I'll accept it as a friendly amendment. And let's move the question on the amendment, which now is based, so instead of cutting tasks.
Hold on, you need the other, who was your second on cutting it all together? That was Councilor Lane, are you amenable to that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Clerk, have you caught up? So the motion is not to eliminate task 5, but to cut it by 20%.
True. So the motion on the floor is now to strike it by 20% to, which is 1,420, which is, my math is, to 5,680.
The staff wish to speak on that. Yes.
I just want to make the point that this line item, this fee, is not one of those that changed from the first round of feasibility studies. This is the same number that we have carried all along. And we do feel that it is extremely important that we have all the resources that our consultant feels necessary to provide a robust public process.
Councilor Lane.
That's fine, the friendly amendment to cut it that much is, and I wasn't trying to open a can of worms here. The thing is I understand there's been work already done. I haven't seen any of that work. I haven't seen any presentations. I have a hard time digesting $7,100, which costs more than to finish the work, without understanding what's been done. So if we already have work done and we don't have any presentations, this kind of seems like just a fluff thing to me. Like if we're paying somebody to do this work, I would expect the presentation to be packaged up nicely for the amount of money that we're spending on it. Yeah, I think it should be included with what we're doing, including what we've already paid.
Further debate on this discrete issue? I'm not seeing any. So this is an amendment as read by the clerk.
This is now a motion to strike task 5 to 5,680, or reducing it by 20%.
Okay.
That was a friendly amendment, now sponsored by Councilor Zeid, seconded by Councilor Lane.
On this one, I'm going to do a roll call just so we can keep our sanity.
Well, as mentioned, are we ready, Mr. President?
We are ready.
Councilor Tantar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Z?
Yes.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Well spoken.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes.
Just follow your
11 yeses.
Where are we now?
Now back to the motion to approve on the floor, I believe.
Okay, Councilor Zede wishes to speak. You have
My
the
final
floor.
amendment is to amend the total transfer amount to $24,589, which my magic calculator says is now the result of task 1 at $20,200, task 3 at $5620, task 4 at $6040, task 5 at $5680, which totals to $37,540 less the $12,951 that is the balance, leaving $24,589, and Ethan is nodding in agreement. So
Need a second.
Okay, I'll second.
All right. Any debate on that? That's the figure. Okay. Let's do one last roll call, and then that's it. This is speak now or forever hold your peace, councilors. Underlying motion at that amount. Go ahead, clerk.
Councilor Tontar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes.
We now have a total.
Anything further from budget and finance?
Now for something not very controversial. Motion to receive and file communication 226, letter from Jim McCarthy, Ray, request for financial inquiry.
second.
I'm sorry, who's the second? Z. Councilor Tonto.
So we discussed this in committee over 2 meetings, I believe. In the first meeting, we heard from Mr. McCarthy, and we heard from the second, actually 3 meetings from that on. Second time. We asked for some information from the administration, and we received 89 pages of information, and I will tell you what we received. We received notice of taking in the city over the past 3 fiscal years, showing the property owners who were delinquent in paying their taxes. Secondly, we received a register of unpaid bills for the past 3 fiscal years, showing balances due that have not yet been transferred to tax title taking. Thirdly, we received a report of tax title receivables over the past 3 years. That is the tax titles that have been paid off. All right. Fourthly, we received outstanding tax title receivables still outstanding over the past 3 years, not yet paid off. Fifthly, we received all license agreements over the past 3 years that amounted to 2 of them, one on the post office parking lot and one with Walsh Construction for the laydown area for the bridge. Sixthly, we received abatements and tax exemptions from 1998 to the present. And we received billing and payment history 1998 to present at 9 Titcomb Street, the site of the lot. So I'd like to thank the administration. They came up with all that information in a very timely fashion. All right, they turned it around very quickly, and I appreciate that. Secondly, I want to note that on 9 Titcomb Street, where the garage is, where the parking lot is, taxes were always paid on that site. All right, we received the full records. New England Development never did not pay their taxes on that site. Now, why is that important? That's important because we would like to think that we have accounting procedures in place that would flag what happened, because what happened was illegal. All right. So what would happen if taxes were not paid on that site? Then the assessor would have to code that in. In other words, why weren't taxes paid on that site? All right? That's a flag, because you know what? There is no code that says, mayor says you don't have to pay your taxes on your property. I know I've tried. No, that's a joke. All right, you know, there's no code for that. That's a flag, and the finance director testified to us that he is pretty sure that he would have picked that up when it came to him and saw that taxes were. However, New England Development continued to pay their taxes on that site. So we have no actual test of whether or not our system would have picked up on it. We think it would, but we don't have a test, right? We also, the finance director also communicated with Melanson Heath, who does our audit financial statements. They said they might have picked it up, but you know, sometimes they focus more deeply in particular areas than others. They rotate around, from what I understand. If they had looked at it more, they might have flagged it. But again, they're looking for material deficiencies. And again, we don't have a test on it because they paid the taxes. All right. We did not investigate the mayor's intent. I think Mr. McCarthy wanted us to. And I think it's extremely, well, I'm just going to say it's impossible to investigate someone's intent. The mayor indicated that she made a mistake, all right? So all three of us voted to recommend that we receive and file.
Further debate, Councilor Z.
Yeah, so thank you. I think that the chair did summarize a process that we sort of underwent. But a couple things. One is, you know, the chair thanked the administration. I also want to thank the resident for writing the letter. And the reason is that this is a big deal. I mean, if there's one thing that sort of is hard to define, but we all know it's critical, and that's public trust. If you don't have the public trust, it basically makes you ineffectual as a local government. So this is a big deal, and I think a lot of us who have been on the council for a little while recognize, in my opinion, some of the sort of inherent challenges with license agreements. And this isn't the first or last time we've seen a license agreement. For those who are watching, license agreements typically are executed solely by the executive branch. They don't come to the council. There may or may not be monetary aspects to them, but as long as the transfer is not required, it may never come through the council. And with all due respect to the administration, this isn't the first time we've seen a license agreement kind of become trouble for us. Some may remember several years ago the Knockmolin baseball field nearly becoming a disaster for us with respect to having invested money into land we never really owned and simply were using under a license agreement, which as it turned out was on fairly shaky grounds, but again, never really came through the council. So I wanted to highlight that I agree that this was an inappropriate action. It was illegal, that's the word that was used, and that particularly when we're embroiled potentially in a large land, potential rezoning and so forth, that the spotlight should be even hotter and even brighter for those of us that are sitting in these seats and are sort of acting on behalf of the residents. Third thing is, I think you're seeing some frustration, frankly, with, again, I mentioned the word pattern with respect to license agreements, but that's not the only example. We also have other enforcement questions. The Committee on Neighborhood and City Services is currently working or trying to parse what happened with asphalt sidewalks on Merrimack Street. And residents may or may not know, but by charter, the City Council does not have any enforcement powers. So that is what's concerning to me, is kind of discussing that pattern. The last piece I'll mention, and I acknowledge that quite a bit of considerable information was returned to us upon our questions. It was done so in a timely fashion. That is appreciated. We did review it. I can't say that anything in there created further flags to offer some measure of closure on this to some degree. What I think we're lacking I'm comfortable receiving and filing this. I think that's fair. But what has not been brought forward is a solution to the underlying challenge, which is how will we continue to use that lot, and if so, under what conditions and under what financial, and that was brought up at both times we talked, and the answer is that it's in process and there may be a solution coming forth in the future, but that remains to be seen. So I do think we should move forward, close the book on this, receive and file it. I've said my piece, we move on, and then I hope that we can see what the resolution is, because besides just the way the deal was done, I do think there is probably some debate about the underlying question about subsidizing parking for city employees and under what terms and conditions. Thank you.
Councilor Khan.
Great, thank you, Council President. I did want to chime in here as well. This was, I do thank the resident for providing this opportunity by getting this letter to us and having us have a discussion on this topic. As counselors kind of at the front line. You know, we face the residents. We get these questions all the time saying, you know, what is going on? There's, you know, something like this does get a little bit of, I don't want to say distrust, but there's definitely, it leaves a tough feeling for residents when you read about something like this. And so I do want to get up and say, you know, I'm glad we were able to discuss it. One thing I would definitely want to point out too is we did get a memo with the responses that the chair discussed and highlighted. And I cannot remember if everyone got that memo, but I do think in light of being transparent and showing the residents too that we did get the responses, some specific questions were answered in this memo. So I would just ask that we probably have that available, whether it's going to be on our website or somewhere for other people to take a look at. It's kind of in the format of a Q&A. It's the memo from February 12th, and I would just ask how could we get that in a place where residents could look at it as well. There's also a question regarding the shanties and the fire boats and where they're parked, and that's addressed in this memo too. So all I ask is if there's a way we could provide this to other counselors who could share it that way, or we provide it somewhere maybe in our next packet. Thank you.
Councilor Devlin.
For my own and the residents at home's illumination, I would ask through the chair, to the chair of the committee, or to the committee members themselves, what is the, what was the nature of the mistake, what was the explanation of the mistake, and what was the actual consideration then paid for by the city for the use of the parking. If they were paying the taxes, then we were parking there for free. And I would like to say about the resident had a right to be outraged from what they read about in the newspaper, for sure. So it was a completely legitimate complaint on the resident's part.
Does the chair have those facts, Chair Counselor?
Yeah, first of all, yeah, I agree with that. We've been said about the resident's letter. Of course, he had the right to do it, of course. Goes without saying. The mayor did not come before the committee. The mayor said the nature of the error was that she, the contract was put in front of her, right? And she reviewed it quickly, and it was pretty boilerplate, and she understood New England Development is concerned with people using it without an agreement, so she signed it. And she did it much too quickly. She did not give it to the city solicitor. She didn't tell any other city officials about it. She thought she was taking care of her problem and did it much too quickly.
I'm sorry, on the consideration though, consideration meaning, do we owe money?
Do we owe money? So the second piece of it is, as far as I know, as far as the committee knows, I think new agreement hasn't been reached. All right, so that hasn't happened yet, and you can back me up on that. I don't think that's happened yet.
Sorry, what was the answer? What?
There hasn't been a new agreement. All right, it hasn't occurred. There is no contract, in other words. This one's illegal, all right, and there's no. I mean, for instance. I think what you're asking me is whether or not we agreed, the mayor agreed to pay a certain amount of money for the fiscal year to use that space. As far as the committee knows, as far as I know, no such agreement has been made. I think that answers your question.
Just to follow up, and then I'll go back to Councilor Zede.
Right. But someone must have communicated, and, typically the way these go is that we have an oral discussion that says, I'm going to rent your parking space, Mr. President, excuse me, and you're going to give me something for it, or I'm going to give you something for it, and then we reduce it to writing, and that's where I can see a mistake being made, that does happen all the time. But I'm trying to figure out what were the terms of the deal that were agreed upon initially. Like, what was the idea? What we were going to
have the contract.
You saw the contract.
Back to the chair. So, in other words, what was the deal? Was they were going to waive? We were going to waive their taxes.
I'm sorry. I thought.
But how much are there? So, all right, for everybody, if I may, the contract, which is illegal, said that in lieu of paying rent, we would not charge the landlord for their taxes. Right. What I don't know is how much their taxes were, and then the question to the chair is, does that mean we owe them cash?
About $4,100 a year.
So that was my question. So that's why the impressions were made together. I wanted to know the nature of the mistake. The nature of the mistake was not that we signed an agreement that we didn't know that we were foregoing taxes. We signed an agreement knowing that, we just didn't know it was not legal.
I can't, Chair, is that correct?
Say that again, please.
This said it was happened because of a mistake.
Yes.
And I was trying to figure out the nature of the mistake. Now, one of the mistakes could have been is that right in the first page where you usually have the rental term, it was missing. So it went from A to C, and B was missing, subsection B was missing, where it said this is what was going to be paid, and it was missing. So what I'm saying is the oral agreement between us, or whatever preceded this, was this actually, the mistake was not the fact that it was included in there that taxes weren't going to be paid in lieu of renting the spaces. The mistake was that that was never vetted by anybody and you know, by legal counsel to say that's not illegal. I'm curious, who proposed that?
Do we know that, Chair? Counselor?
I don't know for sure. I assume it was New England Development. So basically, I think the taxes for 1 year come to around $4,000. $4,000. I think that answers that part of the question. But the second part of that question, which is, sorry, Mr. President, second part of that question, there has been there's no resolution to it. All right. I mean, there hasn't. I believe, I haven't checked. I believe police vehicles are still being parked there, right? And New England Development continues to pay their taxes on the property.
Councilor Z.
I just want to try and respond in another way to see if it helps. So there was nothing wrong with the agreement in the sense that it was a scrivener's error, it was missing a paragraph or this. Literally, the agreement on its face was illegal. There is no construct in state law to waive somebody's taxes in this way. The only way somebody's tax bill can be reduced is statutorily through the parts of MGL which allow for C, 41C. You remember this alphabet soup, the veterans exemption, and so forth. There is no other so on its face, the entire agreement, whether it was construed orally and then later written, was simply illegal. So that's that. The one question that did not come up in committee, which so I don't feel comfortable answering, I don't know that we discussed whether because they continued to pay, has any liability been created for the city. I would just respectfully suggest, because I don't think we can come to that answer. We do have a copy of the agreement. It was, I don't remember how it was provided, if it was a late file or something, but we have it. But we should just ask KP Law that at this point and try, because we're never going to come, I don't know how to answer that question on the floor. So I don't know if there's any previous liability created because they continue paying. And then finally, I don't know what we're doing going forward because, as the chair stated, it appears that cars continue to be parked there, but no new agreement or plan or anything has come forward to say how that continues to happen.
Back to Chair Thompson.
That helps.
So the license agreement was communication 226-01-27-2020. We all received it. And in that agreement, and I think it was a late file. Yeah, I think it was put on a desk. Under covenants, A, the city shall hold the premises or any part thereof. A, shall exempt the licensor from paying any and all municipal taxes that may be assessed upon the premises. So I think, and that comes to about $4,000. So that was in the contract that we saw.
Further discussion, the motion is to receive and file the communication. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Anything further, Chair Thompson?
That's it, Mr. President.
Thank goodness. General government, I'm sorry, education.
Yes.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. I'll keep it quick. The Education Committee met on March 2nd, and we had the CIP actually was provided the previous week to the school committee, and so that is available on the Education Committee's meeting page as well as on the school committee page. And so it's definitely worth, if people want a little preview of what's kind of been slated to be in the CIP, I would suggest you take a look at that. One of the things we asked were how are the priorities developed, and they said that the superintendent said that there's dialogue amongst them, the leadership, the team leaders, as well as what would impact any safety or health concerns amongst the school. And one of the things that I thought was interesting too is we went on to talk a little bit about the current roof situation too, since we have before us what's been sent to Education Committee is to look at the MSBA statement of interest, but the chillers as well came up, and that was not in the CIP, but there was some expression from Mr. Bergholm on not knowing, based on approaching the life of the chillers as well, that might be something that might be coming up as well for consideration. What I would like to say, because we do have this in our committee, Education Committee, we are slated to meet monthly, but based on the mayor's report, we need to, by March 30th, have a decision on the MSBA statement of interest. So I will then have a Education Committee meeting on March 16th, which will, I will work with getting the school committee and the superintendent and find out if they can meet. Typically we meet on the first school committee business meeting of the month, but I will on March 16th try to get a meeting to discuss this. We also talked really quickly about MCAS and metrics on how can the school look at that. And we did find out that there's a team leadership kind of group that was reformulated. It was not around for a few years, and they just started over the last year meeting to come up also with some other metrics aside from the MCAS. And there were a few mentioned to us, and they were going to give us a comprehensive list at our next meeting. Not sure if it's going to be by March 16th, but our other regularly scheduled meeting will be in April, I believe on April 4th, the first Monday of April. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I jumped the gun on general government because normally I would have the vice chair give the report on my behalf. The problem is we weren't at all the meetings, so if you could indulge me. I would make a motion to withdraw take out of committee the proposed KP Law appointment.
Second.
And I'll give my report on that. So that was noticed as committee of the whole last week. Out of the committee, there were 2 of us present who could vote. Councilor Devlin and I recommended to the full council that we approve the reappointment, conditioned upon receiving a satisfactory engagement letter. The engagement letter has arrived, and you should all have gotten a copy of it. It's confidential because it's attorney-client privilege, so it was not in the packet and is not meant to be shown to the public. But if there's any, I would make the motion to approve, conditioned on the engagement letter you have.
Second.
If there's any debate on that, please feel free. Anything? No. I think because it's an appointment, I'd like to do a roll call.
Appointment of 143, approved, conditioned upon engagement letter. Councilor Tontar?
Yes.
Councilor Torgel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes. Thank you.
Appointment is approved.
Councilor Total?
The next item.
Point of order, I'm sorry.
ahead.
I don't think that we voted on taking that out of committee.
Did we not?
We did not. Yeah.
I had a first and a second. I did not have a vote on it.
I beg your pardon. We had to do it over again.
Is a motion to remove on the floor?
There is.
Moved and seconded.
Yep. Moved and seconded. Please, all those in favor of removing it?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's removed. I'll make the same motion again to approve condition on the engagement letter.
Second.
Any debate? Let's try the roll call again.
Councilor Tontar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yep.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes. Thank you, Councilor Vogel. Sorry about that.
You're welcome. In a point of order, if I may, I don't think we took any of those out. I'm just looking right now.
It's the only one we've done so far.
I know, but I don't think any that were in, yeah.
Budget and finance?
Consent agenda.
No, they were not in the consent agenda.
Yeah, no, I never put things on the
Yeah,
consent.
I'm just letting you know.
Yeah.
Budget and finance was.
Okay. Motion to remove Order 109, amendment to political sign guidelines.
169.
I'm sorry, 169.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It's out. Okay, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, let me explain. We did have a meeting about this last week, including all the members and the ex officio member, Mayor Holliday. Now I will yield the floor to the sponsor, the vice chair, who was in attendance to explain the rationale. But we were 3-0 recommending approval. Please, Councilor Connell.
Thank you, Mr. President, and to the members, through you to the members. This seems to me to be a matter of simple common sense and justice and respect for the people who might take it upon themselves to advocate for the election of one of their favorite candidates or more than one of their favorite candidates. It seems to me that we ought to be encouraging, not discouraging, civil engagement. And if someone thinks that Guido Fotogich is a great example of a candidate for Attorney General, and Daisy Distelfink is another great example of a candidate for another public office, why not let them hold more than one sign at a time? As long as they don't leave them unattended, which remains in place. It seems to me also a matter of a freedom of speech to those people who want to be involved. Let them go at it. So I think that the original impulse to limit the display of affection for one candidate or another was flawed, and I hope that you'll help us resolve that situation by approving this tonight.
Councilor Devlin.
I'm doing this from my mother, who has recently moved to Newburyport. Welcome,
Great.
Mom and Dad. But by the end of the day, she's decided that she likes you all so much that she wants to hold everybody's signs, and she ends up doing it. So, and I say, God bless her and let her do it.
Further comment, debate. This is an order, yes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? It's unanimous. Good. Also in committee, we voted 3-0 with the consent of the mayor as well, non-voting to keep the last item in committee. That's not coming out tonight, and that ends general government. So now on to licenses and permits. Anything?
Yes, I'm not sure that this was in the consent agenda, so I'm just going to motion. It was? Oh, great. Motion to approve application 1. Second.
Happy birthday.
Councilor Devlin.
This is one of those ones that I'm eventually going to get around to writing something to change, that we have to go over it every year. Every year I've been on licensing and permits. They have come here. Every other year I've lived in Newburyport. This has been owned by the same person, and it's the same application. He wrote down on the application how many times they've been renewed before. It was years, not just 15 years, but years. I don't know if you ever stopped by him, but he's a nice guy, and according to the clerk, everything's in order, and it came out recommended 3-0.
Further debate on the Sunoco license. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Well, Mr. Clerk, what do we normally do on this one?
Just that,
Right,
voice vote is fine.
vote. Oh, it's okay. Voice vote it is. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Neighborhood and City Service.
Nothing tonight.
Planning and Development.
Oh, one quick one. So we do have our public hearing on Wednesday night for the ordinance for short-term rental units, 7 o'clock upstairs with the planning board.
Thank you. Public Safety.
This Wednesday?
Yes.
Yes, excuse me. Permission to request to remove order 166 amendment to 2-hour zoning on Harris Street.
Second.
Go ahead, Councilor.
There was a meeting on...
Point of order, was that motion to approve? It's
No.
already out from the consent.
Oh, it's already out?
Yeah. Is it already out?
It was in the.
I just motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second,
Second.
or whomever.
On the motion to approve.
Okay. The ordinance that was there had restricted parking on both sides of the street. And from abutters and users, it wasn't working. And so the sponsors, Councilor Devlin and Councilor Arguman, had proposed a compromise to do 2-hour parking on one side of the street northeasterly to alleviate some of the concern. We know it may not be a perfect scenario, but we think it's going to, by committee, it was 3-0, We think it's going to be a solution for now, and we hope that it can alleviate the problems for parking on Harris Street.
Further debate? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous. Please continue.
A motion to approve application 2, Ride to End Alzheimer's.
Second.
Thank you. The application package was complete. No one had come before us to answer any questions. We really didn't have any. It was complete. It was a map. It was insurance form and all that. We recommended 3 to 0 to approve this.
Any further comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
Motion to approve application 3, the Pan Mass Challenge.
Second.
For kids' rides.
Second.
Please.
This application is on 6/14. Just a note, we do have another race on 6/14, but it does not conflict. It's in a different part of the city. The previous one is in the West End, going into Newbury, starting at Riverwalk Brewery and ending there. This was in Cashman Park area, so we don't see a conflict to that. The application was complete except for the insurance, the insurance form, which I believe she's passed along. But our recommendation is conditionally approve this upon acceptance of the insurance form at the clerk's office.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is conditionally approved based on that document. Any further debate or discussion? Seeing none. Oh, yes, Councilor Khan.
Sorry, Council President. I just want to make sure, and I'm sure this was already done, but the police the police department, Newburyport Police Department was fine with the 2 races, and they understood that was...
Yes, different places, different time.
And they
both
were
signed off on it.
Okay.
Police and fire had signed off on it.
Okay, I just had to ask.
There's very limited interaction and street closure or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
I think we're all set. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Anything further?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Public utilities.
Nothing tonight.
Rules. Councilor Vogel.
Just a quick update. So we had a meeting at 6:15 this evening, went till just about 7 o'clock on the amended rules that you've seen over the last couple of meetings and so forth. They'll be summarized and we'll debate them on the floor next meeting.
Anything further?
Nothing further.
Go to the order. Councilor Zeeb.
With the indulgence of the President, I just want to ask my colleagues a question that occurred to me. The referral of the statement of interest to education, we did not do committee of the whole. Is there an interest in that? Does anybody feel like they're going to want to come and speak on what could be a $14 million project? I'm not pushing in either direction. I won't even motion to reconsider and redo that unless there is. I hate when 8 people show up and then a bunch of people have to bite their tongue and not ask questions on. So on this, I just thought I'd mention it. I don't know if anybody can give me some input.
Anything else on good of the order? No? All right.
Okay. Mr. President.
Mr. Clerk.
Just one thing bothering me. This is going back to the fire station vote.
Yeah.
There was a motion to approve on the floor, and there was a motion to approve for some specific. That left the motion to approve dangling. I'm going to be troubled in the minutes with that. Maybe Councilor Tonto could just withdraw it and save me a night's sleep.
What am I withdrawing?
Your original motion to approve, seconded by Councilor
Oh,
Palmer.
yeah, I withdraw that.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you for
sleep.
No, well, wait a minute, consider. I want to discuss it again. Maybe I can convince people to find their reason.
Anything else on good of the order? I've got a couple things. So first of all, weird situation to have the president also give a committee report. So sorry about that. Again, it was only because the vice chair couldn't make the KP Law meeting. So in the future, I'll sidestep that. Also, Rule 17, if I could point it out to Chair Vogel, there was some confusion. There was a point of order raised by Councilor Tantar because the consent agenda has the different order than our regular agenda. So communications come after appointments on the regular agenda. So maybe we want to fix that. I was just following the rule.
Let me know what you just said.
Okay, I remember it. Yeah.
I take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.